Oke, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam para viewers, kembali lagi bersama saya Yudi di channel Ayo X ya. Kita akan bermain truk-trukan dulu ya, santai-santai dulu sambil jalan-jalan di Amerika. Oke, let's go. Mainkan. Tadi ya.
Support comes from Zero Res, starting 2024. Offering services, spaces, limits, and states using non-tax providers. Scheduling at zeroreshouston.com.
I don't know what the conference championship games are, and I don't know why the players wear those tight pants. You're gonna have to just take it.
Layla, I'm glad you asked. The reason why the pants are so tight is because when they get tackled, they don't want the pants to come off. That's why they have to be that tight.
Oh,
Pretty simple, yeah.
there are explanations. Okay, so for those of you like me who don't follow the NFL, it might be stressful with coworkers or friends asking for your hot takes about the big games. We're here to help you fake it until you make it.
Who is asking you for your hot football takes?
Did I not just explain my expertise? I mean, clearly, I'm kidding. We have the perfect person that's not me to help.
Hi, I'm Melissa Jacobs. I'm an NFL contributor for The Guardian, and my social media is at The Football Girl.
All right, in the AFC Championship game Sunday night, Baltimore Ravens host the Kansas City Chiefs. What should you know about the Ravens?
The main name you need to know is Lamar Jackson. He's the do-it-all quarterback with his arms. He's getting it done on the ground, and he is the unequivocal NFL MVP this season.
Okay, and what about the Chiefs?
The most famous name
Hey.
from the Kansas City Chiefs used to be their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, but now it's Taylor Swift. Thanks to her very well-publicized relationship with Travis Kelce, the tight end of the Kansas City Chiefs, is Mahomes is the number one target. I mean, he is just a bruiser out there. He's a total game changer. He's really, really hard to cover.
And then in the NFC, the Detroit Lions are in San Francisco to take on the 49ers.
This is a team, the San Francisco 49ers, perennially in the playoffs, but they've lost the NFC championship the last 2 years, and they lost the Super Bowl 2 years before that. So they have a lot still to prove despite their success, and it will be a disappointing season if the 49ers don't win the Super Bowl.
And what about their opponents from the Motor City?
Well, the Detroit Lions have morphed into America's team. They just won their first playoff game in 32 years, and the Lions are one
paintings, sculptures, photographs, letters, and more from 1595 to present day through June 23rd. HMH.org.
Now, we get support from the Guide to the Divorce Seminar is created by attorney Trey Gates to help women navigate the divorce process. Saturday, February 3rd, the Houstonian registration, guidetogooddivorce.com/radio.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Ricardo Mascara, who developed a comprehensive care clinic to improve outcomes for children with complex medical needs. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
Now, we get support from AARP Texas, presenting We Are For You, We Are For Everyone, a video series exploring AARP's impact on people of all ages. Episode 3, What is AARP, is available now. AARP.org/Texas for you. West Loop southbound past 10, a wreck in a right lane, also 45 southbound to North Loop, stall late to me.
Good morning, I'm Kirsty Manley at the BBC. The UN's highest court has issued a provisional order saying Israel must take all necessary steps to prevent genocide in Gaza. Israel has rejected the case brought by South Africa as wholly unfounded and morally repugnant. The BBC's diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams has been listening.
The court's American President Joe Donahue delivered a bleak summary of the suffering being experienced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. She said the plight of children was especially heartbreaking. The court did not agree to South Africa's request for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, something that would disappoint South Africans and Palestinians alike.
Here in Britain, King Charles has been admitted to hospital for treatment for an enlarged prostate. It's a planned procedure for an issue that affects many older men. The BBC's royal correspondent Sean Coughlin reports.
The King arrived this morning at the London Clinic private hospital in Marylebone for what's been called a corrective procedure for his benign prostate problem. It's the same hospital where his daughter-in-law, the Princess of Wales, is recovering from the abdominal surgery she had last week. The King visited her before his own treatment.
And Liverpool Soccer Club's manager Jurgen Klopp says he's stepping down at the end of the season. In a video message released by the club, he said he knew it would be a shock for many people and that he was running out of energy. Liverpool have won every major club honour since he took over in 2015. At the BBC, I'm Kirsty Manley in London.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Hiscox, committed to helping small businesses protect their dreams. Quotes and information on customized insurance for specific risks are available at hiscox.com. Hiscox, business insurance experts. And from Procter & Gamble, maker of Metamucil, a fiber supplement containing psyllium, a plant-based fiber for trapping and removing waste in the digestive system, designed to be taken every day. More at metamucil.com. This is NPR.
And this is Morning Edition here on News 88.7. Good morning, I'm Matt Garrett. We continue now with News 88.7 In Depth. A new Texas law directly challenging the federal government's role of immigration enforcement on the border is set to take effect in March. That is, if lawsuits don't stop it. As Marfa Public Radio's Travis Bubenik tells us, some in the state's Big Bend region say they're not eager to enforce the new law, which gives local police the power to arrest people suspected of crossing the border illegally.
A Border Patrol agent comes on the radio in Terrell County Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland's truck as he heads down a rocky desert road, sweeping views of the Rio Grande in Mexico off in the distance.
From here, I mean, you can see 100 miles to the east, 100 miles to the west, and 100 miles to the south.
Down at the border, Cleveland hops out of his truck and points out what he says is a common place to cross the border.
The water down in that canyon, and the hill down the one river, come up to the water.
Cleveland's a former Border Patrol agent himself, but his job as sheriff's not that different these days.
The majority of what we do ends up being calls to assist Border Patrol, to assist a landowner that may have spotted somebody on their land.
The Big Bend region sees much fewer migrant encounters, as Customs and Border Protection calls them, in South Texas, where thousands of people have crossed in recent weeks. Cleveland argues the new law is more aimed at those parts of the border. Out here, he says, he won't be arresting migrants suspected of crossing the border illegally.
What I'll be doing is no different than what I do now. I mean, if I encounter somebody that's crossed our border illegally, then the first thing I do will be give Border Patrol a call.
The sheriff's not passing on the new law because he disagrees with it. But he says his small department just doesn't have the resources to take migrants into custody. Sheriff Ronnie Dodson in neighboring Brewster County echoes that.
My problem is in our area is we don't have no place to put them.
Even though border crossing numbers here are the lowest anywhere on the southwest border, Dawson says it wouldn't take much to stress his department.
You know, we could stop one truck and fill the jail.
He says the costs of housing and feeding people arrested under the new border law could quickly add up.
Even if we arrest them and put them in jail, most of these folks ain't never going to be able to pay a fine. You know, so I worry about the burden it's going to put on these counties.
That's also a concern over in Presidio County.
We don't have a lot of money. This is the poorest county in Texas.
Joe Portillo, the county's top elected official.
Once you take someone into custody, it does have a fiscal cost. They need to eat. God forbid one of them needs a doctor. They need, medication. But there will be an added cost to the county.
To help offset those costs, Texas lawmakers did pass a separate measure allowing local governments to apply for some of the $1.5 billion in new border security money approved last year. But it's not clear how much of that will be available. None of the officials interviewed for this story expressed the same kind of human rights concerns about the new law that critics have highlighted, particularly worries that it could lead to racial profiling. But Fernando Garcia, with the El Paso-based advocacy group Border Network for Human Rights, says his group is deeply concerned about police being untrained in immigration enforcement.
It is like it's a formula to expect a systemic civil and human rights violations.
Back on the banks of the Rio Grande, Carroll County Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland says plainly he supports the new law and Governor Greg Abbott's border security crackdown as a whole.
He's the governor of the state of Texas, and his job is to protect Texans, and I think he's doing that exactly.
But as Texas continues to assert more authority over the border than it ever has before, some sheriffs here in this far-flung part of the state say they'll leave the job of immigration enforcement to the feds. In Marfa, I'm Travis Moopin.
Just about 8:50 here at News 88.7. Good morning. West Loop southbound just past 10. Trying to drag an accident out of a right lane. Still that 18-wheeler stalled out North Freeway. It's 45 inbound at the North Loop, sitting in a right lane. Dense fog advisory for another 10 minutes. We'll let you know they extend that. 60% chance of rain later this afternoon into the evening, bringing some cooler temperatures. Today's high in the mid-60s. Tonight's low in the mid-50s. That's where we are right now, 56. Craig Cohen is here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I am excited that it is Friday.
I'm so excited that you are. I'm always excited.
And I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control. I think I like it.
Wow. And you don't drink that much caffeine, do you?
No, I don't.
That's pretty scary.
I probably should drink more. It's been one of those mornings. Coming up on Houston Matters this morning, we're going to begin by talking about this change in policy that the Houston Police Department announced late yesterday. They can now review body camera footage even when a police officer doesn't press record. That sounds weird, but we will explain, give you the insights into that. We'll hear about it from Houston Matters producer Michael Haggerty. Also, the annual Houston Auto Show, or technically the Automotive Show, is going on at NRG. Our Celeste Sherman will explore the growing role of women in the auto industry. She'll talk with Diane Kaplan, head of marketing and brand management at Post Motor Cars. We'll also talk with Sonia Corrales from the Houston Area Women's Center about efforts to improve sexual assault reporting. And as we do every Friday, we turn to a panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. We will do that this morning. Among the topics, Billy Wagner falling just short in this year's Hall of Fame vote. Houston Matters gets underway in 9 minutes. You're on News 88.7.
That deflating balloon sound you may have heard was the stock of the electric car company Tesla yesterday.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Deloitte. Unlocking innovation takes more than AI or cloud. It takes outcome-focused applications. Learn more at Deloitte.com/US/engineering advantage. And by UiPath. More than 10,000 organizations use the UiPath AI-powered business automation platform to put AI to work. UiPath.com/marketplace. UiPath, the foundation of innovation.
I'm David Brancaccio in New York. Tesla stock closed down 12% yesterday after profits for the last quarter and production guidance for the coming quarters was less than dazzling. Plus, CEO Elon Musk suggested Chinese electric car companies are going to eat everyone's lunch if the U.S. industry does not get federal protection. Marketplace's Nova Safra as well.
Tesla had a rough 2023 missing its sales targets despite discounting, which also lowered its profit margins. But there were two remarks from Elon Musk during an analyst call on Wednesday that got the most attention. The first was a prepared remark.
Tesla's currently between two major growth waves.
Okay, so what's the next one? Musk couldn't say. Depended on when the company could produce a planned, cheaper electric vehicle, maybe sometime late next year, he said. The second comment, off the cuff, came in response to a question about competition from Chinese automakers, particularly China's biggest EV maker, BYD, which has its sights set on the North American market.
The Chinese car companies are the most competitive car companies in the world. Frankly, I think if there are not trade barriers established, they will pretty much demolish most other car companies in the world.
Wall Street was unimpressed, apparently confirming existing worries, among some at least, that Tesla may be starting to look less like a tech company and more like a typical automaker with cyclical ups and downs. I'm Novosafo, former News.
Tesla shares down 12% on Thursday are up not quite 1% at the moment. If inflation is on the wane, central bank policymakers can lower interest rates. The measure of inflation Federal Reserve folk like to watch is called personal consumption expenditures, especially if food and energy prices are ignored. Well, there's news this morning. This core PCE, if you sound in the know, was tame for December. Christopher Lowe is chief economist at FHN Financial.
Lots of good news here. The inflation rise, whether you include food and energy or not, was 0.2% in December. Over the course of 2023, inflation was 2.6%, which is pretty good.
All right, so we have the guardians of interest rates meeting next week on these matters. Does this lead them toward a cut in interest rates, or does it persuade them to sit tight?
Lead them toward, I think, is exactly the right way to put it. They're not ready to cut rates yet, and they're probably not ready to cut rates soon. But eventually they will cut because inflation is low. If you look at the quarterly numbers, in the third and fourth quarters of last year, inflation was...
Dulu. Belah mana tidur ini? Mau parkir, tapi tuh udah ngantuk parkirnya tuh. Kenapa? Sorry. Mana coy? Wow, ini kali ya. Ini kali. Tadi nggak bisa, anjir. Kelamaan aing ngirim. Tuh. Jalan sini dong. Shortness. Shortness padahal.
Recomputing.
Ya, kalau jalan ini kejauhan, bro. Balik lagi ke kanan.
Finding a new route. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Caution, please mind the speed limit.
Congressman Colin Allred made a campaign swing through Houston this week in his effort to secure the Democratic nomination to challenge Republican Senator Ted Cruz. News 88.7's political reporter Andrew Schneider spoke with Allred about his recent vote for a House resolution attacking President Biden's handling of immigration and border security.
Allred was one of 14 Democrats, including 3 from Texas, who voted for a GOP-led resolution, quote, denouncing the Biden administration's open border policies.
The fact of the matter is that we do have a crisis at the border, and that we have to respond to it.
At the same time, Allred blasted Republicans for what he characterized as simply exploiting the crisis for political gain.
I will take the exact opposite approach. I will help us pass the comprehensive reform that we know we need to pass, that we've come close to passing under President Bush and President Obama.
Allred currently leads the Democratic field, according to the most recent poll from Emerson College, but a plurality of voters say they have yet to make their primary choice. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
And no injuries were reported yesterday when a twin-engine plane veered off a runway at Hobby Airport. The Houston airport system says the plane's landing gear failed. It ended up in an area that did not affect other airport traffic. No word yet on how many passengers were on board. I'm Matt Harrod, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Coming up this hour, as the Houston Auto Show continues at NRG, we explore the growing role of women in the auto industry, also efforts to improve sexual assault reporting, and this week's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. First, though, Houston Police Chief Troy Finner Thursday announced a newly revised Houston Police Department policy on how it captures officers' body camera footage. Houston Matters' Michael Haggerty is here with more. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Craig.
What's the change?
Well, HPD has reconfigured all of its officers' body cameras so that there's now a way to retrieve footage from the camera for a period of time after there's a police interaction, even if the officer doesn't actually press record.
How does that work?
Well, the cameras are now set in what's called a standby mode, a sort of record after the fact feature, which makes this possible. Officers are still required to activate their cameras, quote, before law enforcement interactions. So they're supposed to hit record regardless. But Finner noted on Thursday that there are some tactical instances when an officer in the heat of the moment may forget to do so, of course. He characterized this change as a bit of protection for officers as they're focusing on the situation at hand if they do fail to press record.
Why not just configure officer body cameras to record 24/7?
Well, Finner says that's actually prohibited by state law, and that they only want this policy to be used to review official police actions, not any private moments that might be captured. So the Houston Chronicle reports that Houston Police Officers Union President Doug Griffith noted that such after-the-fact recording reviews will also be reported in writing and subject to review.
So the police union's on board with this?
Yeah, and Chief Finner noted that the department and the union have been discussing this for quite a while.
When did this policy change take effect?
According to Finner, the cameras were updated to this new setting back on December 21st. He also says the policy revisions still being drafted, so there could be some more tweaks to all of this. Until then, though, Finner says officers need approval from him directly before they go and retrieve any of these after-the-fact videos.
What prompted this policy change?
Well, Finner says some discussions on this have been ongoing, and there have been other incidences that may have helped prompt it, but on December 17th, just 4 days before this change was implemented, a Houston police officer shot a man in the back. The incident occurred after a chase that was in connection with a reported robbery in Northeast Houston. And hours later, Houston police confirmed the officer's body camera was not activated during the incident. So the chase and then the confrontation that led to the shooting were not recorded on his camera. HPD's Internal Affairs Division began an investigation, and to date, no explanation's been given for why the officer's camera was not turned on.
If they are still finalizing this policy, what led to the announcement of the revision on Thursday?
Well, this all comes a week after HPD released some dash camera and body camera footage from other officers who arrived after that shooting took place on December 17th. Finner's noted HPD has been committed to releasing what footage it has of such incidents within 30 days, and, well, that's exactly what they did. Within hours of that footage being released, Chief Finner noted that there would be this policy change announcement coming in a matter of days.
How long have officers been wearing body cameras?
HPD's had them since 2016. In that 30-day commitment been in place since 2021, and this is the first significant revision to HPD policy since then.
Meantime, there has been some other body camera-related news coming out of Harris County. What's happening at the Harris County Jail?
Right. According to our Lucio Vasquez, the Harris County Sheriff's Office is trying to build trust with the community by outfitting its detention officers with cameras. They began deploying them last month and should be done by the summer. You recall the Harris County Jail, they've experienced a high number of inmate deaths, 19 in fact last year. This is part of an initiative to increase transparency there.
So a lot from law enforcement relying more on those body cameras. Keep an eye on for now. Houston Matters, Michael Haggerty, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And up next, while the Houston Auto Show's in full swing, we consider the growing role women play in what's long been a male-dominated auto industry. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
The creators of Black Church, Henry Louis Gates Jr. and PBS, present Gospel, a series celebrating the Black preaching tradition and its deep connection to gospel music. Premieres Monday, February 12th at 8 p.m. on PBS and on the PBS app. And on Sunday, February 4th at 7 p.m., KTSU and Gospel Music House and Museum presents the Good News Gospel Music live stream, featuring a variety of voices from Houston's gospel community of singers. View online at ktsuradio.com.
Support comes from the UH Health Family Care Center, offering primary care and behavioral health services on the University of Houston campus. Health insurance plans including Medicare and Medicaid accepted. New patient appointments and more at 832-UH-CARES.
And from Comcast Business, helping to protect small businesses from big cyber threats with security options from Comcast Business. Restrictions apply. Requires Comcast Business, Internet Lease Router, and Security Edge.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. The Houston Automotive Show, combination auto and boat show, is in full swing at NRG. The auto side of it showcases vehicles ranging from power trucks to electric vehicles to luxury sedans. Diane Kaplan knows that industry well. She's head of marketing and brand management at Post Oak Motor Cars, the exclusive Gulf Coast Bentley, Bugatti, and Rolls-Royce dealer. She's also an example of one of the women making inroads into what's long been a more male-dominated industry. Houston Matters' Celeste Sherman has more.
When we think about cars, we often think of cutting-edge technology, innovation, the future, and yet even with all of this so-called progressive thinking, there's a huge gap in the industry of women in key leadership roles. Cars aren't idle, yet there hasn't been a whole lot of movement for women in the automotive industry. But that's not the case for Diane Kaplan, who has worked her way up to being one of the key leaders in luxury vehicle marketing right here in Texas and is based in Houston. I met up with Diane at the Bentley Houston dealership, where it became very obvious she was the one driving not the bus, but the Bentley. Diane is currently the head of marketing and brand management at Post Oak Motor Cars. Over her span of automotive experience, she has represented brands such as Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Bugatti, Mercedes-Benz, and Porsche. Diane, have you always loved cars?
Oh my God. Ever since I was a little girl, I always kid, and I'm not lying, I had more Matchbox cars than I did Barbie dolls. My dad used to buy old Mustangs, fix them up. I was in there in the engine just watching him. I was so enthralled with these cars, their sound and just everything. And the feeling that you got getting, it was a sense of freedom. You know, you get in your car and you can just go anywhere. Right. You know, my first car was a Camaro, had a V8 engine. I thought I was like, oh my God, it was so fast. I was so excited. Yeah, so I've always loved cars.
So it's something that it's in your blood.
It's in my blood. It's yeah, I can't explain it. I just love them.
So take me back a few years. Okay. How did you open doors for yourself in such a male-dominated industry?
You know, it's funny. I've always seemed to find myself in situations and job opportunities where it was male-dominated. So I came into a job as an assistant for a bunch of bond brokers, all males. I mean, there was like maybe 2 women on the floor. I was computer network administrator, worked my way up. Always really good with computers, always very technical. And kind of survived there with all of those men. And it was funny, I had saved up enough money and got my first first Mercedes. I was so excited. The lady that was my salesperson, she had just been promoted from being a receptionist and greeter at Mercedes-Benz to a salesperson. She was killing it. But this is way back before anybody had computers on their desk. I mean, the only person with a computer was the finance person. That was it. And I just, and then the internet, Auto Trader had just launched, eBay Motors had just launched, and they called me 6 months after I bought my car. Hey, you're the only person we know that loves cars and knows how to turn on a computer. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a computer geek. I don't sell. Like, that's not me. But I did, and I killed it. You know, I took a chance, and I loved it, and I was addicted. I'm sold.
That's amazing. And so much so in 2021, you were nominated as one of the top Ferrari marketing managers in the U.S.
Yes.
What was the key factor for you rising in such a challenging environment?
What's kept me going for over 25 years has been my passion for cars. As you know, I left for a few years and I thought, you know what, I want to try something different. So I was a group publisher of a bunch of magazines across the country, and I loved it, but I just couldn't get away from the cars, and I went back to it. If it wasn't for the passion for the cars, I probably would have found something else. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But there's something about it. I love that every day is different. I'm tough. I mean, you just have to be. Women have made so many strides in this industry, but we're still behind. But I mean, it is night and day from whenever I started. Now it's very common to find general managers of stores, and I'm proud of the progress we've made, but we still have a long ways to go.
Right. And that's such an interesting point that you make. Do you feel there is a discrepancy between women as car consumers and women being viewed as leaders within the industry? I mean, what is the difference? Women make up over 50%, 56% of consumers that are purchasing, and they're coming into the dealerships, and women are feeling much more comfortable asking car questions and kind of, like you said, kind of enjoying the actual feel of the car and the sound and kind of taking ownership.
But you know, I give credit for women feeling more comfortable walking into a store and enjoying cars to all these influencers out there. If it wasn't for social media and all of that stuff, obviously we've got Supercar Blondie. Alex has done an amazing job. She is a friend of mine. She has done so much for raising awareness for women. But look at all the women motorsports. I work with Risi Competizione, who's currently at Rolex, 24 Hours Daytona, and how many drivers are women? Like, that would have been unheard of years ago.
Right.
And think about it too. Women now are making more money. We're finally getting up there with our pay. We're getting paid just as much as men, and we're in more powerful roles. So we have the funds now to walk in and buy a Bentley or a Mercedes or whatever car it is. They don't need a man anymore to buy a car.
And I love that. And I love that you say that that's a very big key component, is the fact that there's this level of independence that we haven't had in the past. And there isn't that key aspect of influencers or any mom who's sitting there looking at her phone and sees another woman walk in. And I think it's a testament to a dealership as well to have a female within their own a department that can greet another woman.
For sure. I mean, that was one of my successes when I was selling cars, was women would call, I want to work with a female. Do you have anybody on the floor?
Yes.
It's important. I mean, I give credit to my boss, Lonnie, he is such an advocate for women. We've probably got more women here than guys. It's a little crazy. Yeah, they're not all here, but just wait. There's a lot of women here. And I love that. I think that you go on somebody's website, they do look at the staff, and they want to see how many women do they have. It's very common.
And they want to be greeted by a female, right?
They do.
You started Heels in Horsepower, a car club for ladies that own supercars such as Ferraris, McLaren, Bentleys, Rolls-Royce, Aston Martins.
Yep.
What kind of reception did you get?
You know, I started that concept, was in 17. I launched it in 18, where I flew in Supercar Blondie and had this big car show. I love doing events. It was great, and it was gaining traction. I had taken it to Dallas and to Austin, and I had big plans. And then we had the pandemic hit. And then I had moved to Mexico. So I'd kind of part-time retired, and I'm like, lived in the jungle and was at the beach every day and flying back here.
Turn left. Turn right. You have arrived at your destination.
manager. There's some amazing general managers out there. Maria that runs, Porsche River Oaks and Porsche West Houston. She's over both stores. It is one of those industries you get out of it what you put into it for sure. But if you're a hard worker and you want to make money and you love cars, it's amazing. I don't know. I love it.
Reporting for Houston Matters, I'm Celeste Sherman.
The Houston Automotive Show continues at NRG through Sunday. Just ahead, addressing shortfalls in the legal system affecting victims of sexual assault. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
Stream your favorite PBS shows and films like Miss Scarlet and the Duke, Nova, Nature, and Ken Burns documentaries when you join Houston PBS Passport. For as little as $5 a month, members have extended access to over 4,000 acclaimed arts, science, history, and lifestyle programs. Get exclusive early access to episodes before they air or watch behind-the-scene footage from your favorite shows, all from the PBS video app. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/passport.
Support comes from the Houston Symphony, presenting Jazz, Love, and Gershwin, A Century of Rhapsody in Blue, featuring jazz pianist Marcus Roberts next weekend at Jones Hall. Tickets available at houstonsymphony.org.
We get support from Interfaith Ministries Refugee Services in conjunction with the U.S. State Department, resettling individuals and families fleeing their homeland, offering English, job resources, and other services to help refugees become self-sufficient. More at imgh.org.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Harris County wants to address shortfalls in the legal system affecting victims of sexual assault. A report out this month explores those shortfalls. Here to tell us more about it is Sonia Corrales, Deputy CEO of the Houston Area Women's Center. Sonia, good morning.
Good morning.
This report released this month comes from a sexual assault response team, or SART, created by Harris County Commissioner's Court, and the Houston Area Women's Center presides over it. Who else is a part of it?
So the sexual assault response team here in Harris County was started back in 2021 as a result of legislation, and it is a multidisciplinary team. So you have different disciplines around the county that are organizations or agencies where sexual assault survivors engage in or they navigate through. And so they include the district attorney's office, they include law enforcement, and in the Harris County SART, we have the Sheriff's Department and the Houston Police Department. It also includes the medical forensic nursing, so Memorial Hermann, and some of the other forensic nursing like, Harris Health and the Texas FNE. We also have other organizations that are a part of it. So we have other sexual assault programs in the county that are also included, like The Bridge or in Webster and in Humble. So we have different organizations that have come together to really address the issue of sexual assault in our community through this SART.
Can I ask you to lean in towards that microphone a little bit further? What exactly did this group, this SART, set out, though, to do, in particular with the development of this report?
Well, one of the things just to know, and what we know about sexual assault response team is that they're not new, right? So they've been around since the 70s, actually, but they haven't been around quite in this way because now it's mandated. So in Harris County, through the Texas legislature, it was mandated that every single person in every corner of all of the counties in the state had some kind of representation of a sexual assault response team. And in Harris County, we represent, the county, even though there's other areas in our region that may have its own SART. And so the idea is that you bring this multidisciplinary team together to really look at the protocols that we have and build this infrastructure so that we all can respond to sexual assault survivors in a way that is going to be respectful and is going to allow them to navigate not only criminal justice systems, but also be able to have resources in the community. And then how do we all work together towards that common goal of making sure that we are responding in the way that we need to respond by making sure that we're increasing safety for survivors, but also that you ensure that these systems are holding the offenders accountable.
I guess you have to start then by looking at what various data tells you about those systems, like every interaction that every law enforcement agency has, every social service has, everybody that has something to do with a case like this. What'd you find out?
So one of the things that we know is that, of course, Harris County is pretty large, and so we have a lot of strengths in our county, right? We have been around as systems for a very long time, and so we've developed different systems within criminal justice and also in the community. Like, for example, the Houston Area Women's Center has had a rape crisis program and is, the rape crisis center in the city, and has been around since, 1980. The Houston Area Women's Center has been around since 1977. We know that systems-based advocates, and then we also know that law enforcement also has individualized units. For example, they have a sexual assault unit. So those have been around since the 90s, even though police have been responding to sexual assault for a very long time. So what we did was we looked at every single area, every single discipline, and said, what do you have and how do you respond? And so we all brought all of those things together and created a protocol, and a protocol that we all agree that when a sexual assault survivor comes through any one of those systems, that they are going to treat survivors in the way that we say this in the protocol and that we all agree to do it. One of the things that we found is that while we are really great at cooperating with one another and even collaboration to a certain extent, and we have really great relationships with one another, is that there is room for improvement in collaboration. So imagine a sexual assault survivor who comes, whatever door they come in through, so they come in through the rape crisis door, which is the Houston Area Women's Center. They come in, so how do we support that survivor as they navigate that system? And then on the other side, how do they ensure that they're working with the local nonprofit organization to make sure that that person goes through that system in a way that is respectful and meaningful?
In the process of sussing all of that out, have you found that someone who is in a circumstance like this is sometimes not given information that they should be given, or told or instructed in a way that they shouldn't be? Or I'm trying to kind of get at what are some of the challenges in the system, in the process that people go through that you identified that through this report could be made better?
So I think there's a few things. So one of them is that we know that, and we're not unique, like Houston and Harris County is not unique to this, and that is we know that case outcomes, in the long run are not great, right? So when survivors go through any system, that ultimately the outcome may not be a prosecution, or they may not have a favorable experience with the police. And historically, we've known that. We've known that survivors of sexual assault don't often and have not often had really great experiences, with law enforcement or with other criminal justice officials. So what we want to make sure that we have is that we have that survivor voice, and that's one of the recommendations, is that how do we elevate the voices of survivors and really listen to their needs? So, the question that you ask about what is happening in the criminal justice system, or in any system for that matter, and what is happening with survivors, and so we want to make sure that we hear from them through either surveys. So each entity should have its own way of making sure that they are getting that information from survivors. So at the Houston Area Women's Center, we provide a survey to give us feedback. Through the SART, we created a survey for survivors and then interviewed survivors to see what their experiences were, in the criminal justice system. And then we use that data and information to make sure that those protocols that we put in place need to be improved, or what it is that we need to change, because these protocols are a living document.
Did you find that police could be investigating these crimes better?
Absolutely.
In what ways?
And so one of the things that we know is that when a survivor comes forward, one of the things that we want to make sure that the investigator does is that when they initially come, is that how do we make sure that survivor staying engaged, right? So if that survivor, for whatever reason, thinks that the police department or that law enforcement officer did not believe them, then that case is, maybe that person is never going to come back or engage, with that police department. So when we work together, so if you have a victim advocate within the police department, or if you have a rape crisis person who is engaged with that person, how do we re-engage, that individual? Because once that person is gone, from that criminal justice system, they may never come back, and in that case may not ever be investigated. One of the other things that we know about just addressing sexual assault is that we have to understand the systems, what that survivor goes through. So what is the trauma? What does that look like? So one of the things that we did in the SART is really understanding the behavior of survivors through this training called Neurobiology of Trauma. And so when we, as system providers, whether you are police, whether you're prosecution, whether you're anybody who is engaging with a sexual assault survivor, when you understand what trauma looks like, you're better able to address, the issues, because this is a crime where credibility has been an issue for a long time, meaning that survivors' credibility is at stake, so they may not be believed. And that's a larger issue, obviously, because of our society not believing survivors. And in our culture, we still, as a society, do not believe survivors and continue to blame them. And we have a hard time holding offenders accountable. So this will hopefully change that. This sexual assault response team is what we're hoping, when we all come together, that together we can really make a difference.
Sonia Corrales is Deputy CEO of the Houston Area Women's Center. Sonia, thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
And still to come, this week's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
Hi, I'm Alan Gonzalez, and I'm the fashion designer for Allentude. I put on a fashion show my sophomore year of high school, completely by accident. I had actually asked the costume designers of our high school to put on a show, and I was like, I'll just play producer and I'll get you all the models and we'll make it cute and it'll be great and it'll be about you guys. They're like, okay, Alan, we got it. And they canceled on me last minute, so I was like, ugh. And I guess I have to make all the designs now. So I made all the designs in like a month, and that's why I was like, guys, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So we were hot gluing, we were stapling, but everybody looked at me like, I remember one of the dresses was literally me wrapping like fabric just around the model and tying it, and I was like, okay, I hope it stays, have fun. And I threw her onto the runway, and everybody loved that, and I was like, okay, I guess we're onto something here. And they're like, Alan, you have an eye for this. I think you should really like learn the craft, change your career here, and put that creativity to use. I think that just the personality that you see with me as a person is what I translate onto my designs. I love a good black, gray, and white. Definitely comes back to clean lines, construction, very much just having you look as classic as possible, but with a nice little flair twist that's like a lot more, and it's just so in your face. You're like, whoa, I did not see your little black dress going in that direction. For me, it has to be seeing my client content. That has to be what really does it. The reason that I went into this was because I understand that feeling of being on stage and getting those claps and feeling just amazing. And so I wanted to give that to everyone. And I think by being a fashion designer, I get to. My name is Alan Gonzalez. I'm the fashion designer for Allentude, and you're listening to Houston Matters with Craig Cohen.
If you took part in our recent fundraiser, take an extra step to have your donation matched. Current and retired employees may be eligible for an employee matching program. Visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/match to search for your company.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Tacoma, presenting the Danish String Quartet with music of Haydn and Shostakovich, and Schubert's Death and the Maiden. February 16th at Wortham Center. Tickets at Tacoma.com.
Support comes from the Shepherd School of Music at Rice, presenting Deconstructing Mozart, scenes from Così fan tutte and Le Nozze di Figaro, Sunday afternoon, February 4th, in Brockman Hall for Opera. Tickets at music.rice.edu.
And from Comcast Business, helping to protect small businesses from big cyber threats with security options from Comcast Business. Restrictions apply. Requires Comcast Business Internet lease router and Security Edge. A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Mary Flood, consultant with Andrevet Legal Media and Marketing,
higher salaries for some teachers while excluding librarians. Mike Miles' new education system will expand next year. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Marco, start us off.
I'm going to say hopefully good. I think it's too early to tell. This is a really big subject. I mean, it touches so many elements that I think people should just approach this topic with caution because there's so many elements that are involved in it. And I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I think there's something to be said for the criticism that's being leveled already. I mean, I read some of the materials describing these new plans. Some of them seem concrete, others are very vague. You know, when they talk about, and we're going to implement innovative solutions, I'm like, you're just saying you're going to see something, do something new, that is the plan, is to do something different because things are not working well. And so I'm always a little bit suspicious when I see a lot of corporatees, you know, ladling the entire plan. On the other hand, there are some specific things that are being done. I know some people are complaining about the elimination of some of the funding for other services, particularly what they call the wraparound social services. This may not be such a bad thing, though. The one thing we have to admit is that what we have been doing hasn't worked, and the arguments that these things would improve things didn't pan out. I think a case could be made that perhaps putting too much on schools isn't the answer, and that whatever support we want to give to needy families maybe needs to go through a different direction, and rather than having schools get so distracted on so many different missions and goals that it's just not realistic for them to do this. I know.
This programming is sponsored by Central Market, offering more than 100 varietals of locally grown and locally roasted coffees, including specialty in-house roasted beans, organic, and micro-lot choices from around the world. CentralMarket.com.
No fan of Miles. I did not like him second-guessing the freeze decision. I thought that was kind of dangerous and ignorant. I didn't like him closing libraries or excluding librarians. I didn't like him spending money on a musical honoring himself. And
good point.
You know, I'm worried about the teacher exodus, though I don't know if they're good or bad teachers who are leaving. You know, I think you might need a coordinator of like common sense, basically, to get some of this right. If this new reform system is good or not, I just don't know, but I am concerned that that there's been a complaint that some of the fixes in other schools that have already used this are bleeding into the schools that are doing everything right. The schools that don't have a problem, and yet they're starting to follow some of these. I do like the higher teacher pay. I do like the words innovative and high quality, but I don't know what that's going to mean, just like Marco. I like the idea of arts classes. They were very valuable for me as a kid, and I'm still remembering now hearing Carmen when I was in like the 2nd or 3rd grade in school. I like the field trips, and I'm not opposed to daily quizzes, but, you know, I was a suck-up kid in school, but I'm not opposed to that. I'm not sure if they're all having a class called the Art of Thinking. I think that was like half of my law school that was the Art of Thinking, so I don't know about that, but I do know when I had a 17-year-old living with me and going to HISD, the school was just horrible. Her high school was just horrible. I called all her teachers, and they were shocked that I called to see how she was doing. She said that most of what happens during the day was that kids were using multiple colored magic markers to send each other pretty notes. And when she came home, the projects were way under her grade level. So it was really unimpressive. I hope this helps, and I hope Miles maybe gets that, you know, common sense coordinator.
I just want to add to that, I do think we talked about this before last year, but that show, that Miles show, I don't know what's going on with this country, but it does seem to be an epidemic of folks in positions of authority, office holders from mayors to superintendents to others. I see this everywhere now. It seems to be spreading, creating these videos
videos and shows which are very self-promotional. I don't know what it is. I think it's very...
Unrecognized virus.
I don't know what it is. I think it's very unattractive. I think it's undignified. And when I saw that, I just thought that it was hard to explain.
Ridiculous.
Panel, a 61-year-old man wrongfully accused of an armed robbery here in Houston in 2022 and whose attorney says was sexually assaulted while in jail is suing the parent company of Sunglass Hut, Macy's, and others, alleging they used faulty AI technology to incorrectly ID him and report him to police. As Houston Public Media's Adam Zuvidich reported Tuesday, Harvey Murphy Jr.'s lawyer says Murphy was in Sacramento, California, when a Sunglass Hut on West Gray was robbed in January 2022. But Murphy was charged with the robbery when the companies in question used facial recognition software to compare surveillance footage with an 80s-era mugshot of Murphy. The lawyer says Murphy was then arrested when he returned to Texas to renew his driver's license and transferred to the Harris County Jail, where the alleged assault took place before his alibi was corroborated and the charge dropped. Now Murphy wants $10 million from the companies who falsely ID'd him to police. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Mary.
Ugly. The government guys involved at both the police level, at the police level, the DA's level, and even the jailer probably have immunity, which it's ugly for them too. This lawsuit was filed by lawyers at Rusty Hardin's office, and I work with Rusty happily and proudly. Not on this case, but my colleagues at Andervet are working with him. So. Jail should have done more, and I hope this case opens some eyes, both private and public sectors.
I agree with Mary wholeheartedly on this, and I think it's an issue that I think folks from different sides of the political spectrum can agree on. This is certainly an egregious violation of someone's civil rights, and I do think this should be a wake-up call to the state legislature to address this issue before it gets out of control. I think it's possible, you know. I mean, there are a lot of folks on the right and I think on the left that do care about this issue, particularly when it comes to police surveillance. And so I actually think this would be an issue that could, it just hasn't been discussed until now, and now we're seeing it coming up. So I think this might be a rare area of bipartisanship that could secure, our rights for, because like I said, this is an egregious situation.
It has been discussed before now because of the skewing against black people, and I know the ACLU has been pushing this for years.
Well, this has been, but this has been more, and unfortunately, you bring the ACLU position is not one that's going to sell. I think, if you have to focus more on the concerns that appeal to, or matter to everyone. The ACLU study, unfortunately, is one study that's not been replicated, and it was conducted by people who clearly had an ideological lens. So it's when you start looking at it that way, that's not going to be a case that people are going to buy.
I'm not saying that our legislators going to pay any attention to ACLU.
But if you bring it to issues that are more broadly accepted, people can understand. I think anybody can understand.
Absolutely.
What happened here. So, and of course, so I think that there's something to be done here, and certainly I think the case is so egregious. I think you actually could get something done in this area, as long as you keep it away from trying to divide people on the basis of race or trying to make it an identity-based issue. I think that you don't have to do that here. There's enough here that you could get a lot of folks on the ground saying this can't happen. It doesn't matter whether it's affecting a certain group of people by more percentages than others, because we can get into that all day long.
I like it that that's us agreeing.
Panel, the Baseball Writers Association of America has voted Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Todd Helton into the next class inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame. All three eclipsed a 75% vote threshold to be enshrined, but a fourth would-be Hall of Famer fell just short. Longtime Astros reliever Billy Wagner, who at 73.8% was only 5 votes shy of going in this year. Wagner earned 422 career
something that was top of mind this week was Billy Wagner and whether he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Everyone who knows me knows that was just I was just torn over this. But I'm sure Mary's going to have a lot of thoughts for us on this case. All I can tell you is it's not bad. So it's just nothing. It's something that happened. I would say it's good for this reason. Nothing unjust or unfair happened, right? Nothing unfair happened. So that's good. In this world, we can take our wins where we can. I've heard the criticisms. I can honestly say I come in as a truly unbiased observer to determine whether some injustice has occurred, and I determined that no injustice has occurred. I looked to me from the commentary on social media that it was roughly about 3-1 in favor of him being cleared versus some saying that no, not necessarily. So it kind of reflected the actual vote. He's got one more chance, so it's not like it's done for good. I thought it was also interesting to notice that the people in New York were referring to him as a Mets player, not Astros at all.
If you look at Cooperstown, they list Yogi Berra as an Astros guy. So he was a coach for us for a couple of years. It's hilarious.
Yeah, so and I saw some people were offering, that well, maybe it's because he hasn't pitched as many innings, and that's the reason why. And I'm it's all academic to me. You can come up. It's so subjective. Ultimately, at the end of the day, right? That I'm okay with this because nothing unfair has happened.
Because you could care less about baseball.
Well, like I said, I don't care about justice, though. So I do care about that. So if somebody says to me it's unfair, I would say, oh, it's unfair. But I think nothing bad has happened here.
Well, Billy Wagner belongs in Cooperstown, and I hope he gets there next year. He's only 5 votes short. I know my significant other, David Barron, who's a baseball writer, voted for Billy Wagner along with 283 others. This guy was an all-star 5 times. He belongs there. I read somebody saying it was apropos that he's bringing it right down to the wire, given how many nail-biter games he helped in. I mean, 422 saves is pretty amazing. Our recent Hall of Famers, Biggio and Bagwell, were both, really wonderful about it. Talked about what a decent guy he was, how hard he worked, and how much he deserves this. And Biggio was talking about how late it came for him as well in the voting. When he left MLB, when Wagner left MLB, he went and coached a kids team. I mean, he's a cool guy, and he was really gracious about this and about the guys who did make it in. I do feel, and this may not be the baseball writers who do this, but I feel like there's an MLB prejudice against the Astros and those of us on the third coast, not being the California teams and the Northeast teams. And I think that the 2017 cheating scandal where they decided we're going to put our foot down and we're going to make an example of these guys was ridiculous because the Yankees and the Red Sox in a World Series, had done similar things, and they were like minor misdemeanors the way they treated them. So I kind of don't like that, and so I do want to see Wagner, yes, next year, but keep in mind that I think Roger Clemens should be in Cooperstown. And, this week he said, I don't care if I'm there, and I interviewed him in 2008, and he told me then he didn't care if he went to the Hall of Fame. But, of course, right after that, he was, indicted for lying to Congress. Think about that, lying to Congress. Think about how many politicians there lie all the time, how many people lie to Congress all the time, and this guy's tried for it. The jury, of course, acquitted him. But I think he was cheated, and I sure don't want to see Wagner cheated.
He is a closer, He is a closer, and occasionally closers don't just have to pitch the 9th, but they have to come back out in the 10th, and that's what he's going to have to do next year.
It's going to be interesting to see. We're getting a new closer in the Astros to see what we do with the closer we have now. It's so much fun when they bring him out now, and we all use our phones and they play that Mean Johnny Cash song. It's going to be interesting to see what we do next year with 2 superb closers.
Indeed. So you do think this was bad?
Yeah, I started out saying it was bad here. I think. I don't know. We can throw a flag down and get a replay.
Well, we'll get a third vote on this on Monday's Houston Matters when we talk with Leaving Astros podcast co-host Jeff Balke about the Hall of Fame and in particular about Billy Wagner. Mary Flood is a consultant with Androvet Legal Media and Marketing. Marco Roberts is chairman of the Texas Conservative Liberty Forum. Mary, Marco, thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Michael Haggerty, Joshua Zinn, Troy Schultz, Celeste Sherman, Garrett Bowman, and Brett Valdivia. Jared Carroll's our technical director. On Monday's show, what we can learn from Haiti about democracy, climate change, and other global challenges is the subject of Texas writer Ben Fountain's latest novel. Also, your pet care questions for veterinarian Dr. Lori Teller. You can send those now to talk@HoustonMatters.org. And as I just mentioned, we'll discuss Hall of Fame voting, Billy Wagner's chances for next year, and what other Astros, past and present, could be Cooperstown bound in the years to come. We'll chat with Believe in Astros podcast co-host Jeff Balke. I'm Craig Cohen. Have a great weekend. Then join us Monday for those and Houston Matters.
Support comes from the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, presenting the Rocco Connection Series, a musical performance for the 25th anniversary of the Rienzi House Museum, January 27th, or at mfah.org/blossoms.
Support comes from Stewart PC, a Houston law firm assisting executives and employers with executive employment agreements, litigating executive compensation and non-compete agreements, and management training. More at attorneysforexecutives.com.
Support comes from Japan America Society of Houston, presenting Nihon Buyo in the 21st century, from kabuki to bolero, 7:30 p.m., February 3rd at the Hobby Center. Tickets at jas-hou.org.
Checking out the weather, sponsored by attorney Trey Bergman, conducting arbitrations, mediations in person and by video conference. They did extend that dense fog advisory until 10, which is about to go away, but we'll see if they extend that again. 60% chance of rain today into the evening. Mid-60s for the high. Tonight's low in the mid-50s. Maybe a little bit of sun for the weekend and some clouds. High around 60 with the lows in the upper 30s, the low 40s. Cool front after this rain. 57 right now. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston, 10 o'clock.
Missing mail and massive delays in postal delivery sparking action from a Texas congressman. That story and a whole lot more today on the Texas Standard.
Texas Standard is a production of KUT Austin, KERA North Texas, Houston Public Media, and Texas Public Radio in San Antonio.
I'm David Brown. Congressman Al Green in the Houston area on frustrations reaching a boiling point with the Postal Service. We'll hear what he plans to do about it. Also, a controversial law to allow Texas law enforcement to make arrests of people suspected of crossing the border illegally. Not all police departments eager to enforce the new law. Concerns about the spread of a disease leads to the euthanization of the entire deer population at a wildlife management area. New testing suggests those deer didn't have to be killed. Those stories and a whole lot more when the Standard gets started. Right after this.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. In an anticipated ruling, the UN's top court says it is plausible Israel has committed acts of genocide in Gaza. But the court did not take a temporary measure and demand a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The allegation of genocide was brought by the South African government. President Cyril Ramaphosa says his country filed the case, referencing its own history of white apartheid against black South Africans.
We as South Africans must be bystanders and watch the crimes that were visited upon us being perpetrated upon other people elsewhere.
But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu again condemned South Africa's accusation.
The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous, and decent people everywhere should reject it.
Health authorities in Gaza say more than 26,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war started last October. The majority are Palestinian women and children. The United Nations says it has fired several employees in Gaza. NPR's Jeff Brumfield reports the firings came following Israeli allegations they were involved in the October 7th attack by Hamas.
In a statement, the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees said it had fired several employees for, quote, alleged involvement in the October 7th attack, which killed around 1,200 people in Israel. The UN agency also said it was launching an investigation and might pursue criminal prosecution of its former employees. Both the UN and the Israeli government declined to provide further details about the allegations, but the U.S. State Department says a dozen UN employees were allegedly involved. The U.S. also says it will pause additional funding to the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees pending review. Jeff Brumfield, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
In the U.S., the federal government is examining several major tech companies and their investments in artificial intelligence. As NPR's Derek Kerr reports, the Federal Trade Commission says it's concerned about fair competition.
The Federal Trade Commission issued orders to 5 companies this week: Amazon, Anthropic, Microsoft, Google parent Alphabet, and OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT. The government agency is requiring they provide information on recent billion-dollar investments and partnerships in AI. FTC Chair Lena Khan says the inquiry is necessary to ensure fair competition. The orders come as scrutiny intensifies over companies that control AI. Chatbots like ChatGPT, which have exploded in use over the last year, are only expected to grow. Microsoft bought a 49% stake in ChatGPT parent OpenAI. A Microsoft spokesperson said partnerships like this are, quote, promoting competition and accelerating innovation. Dara Kerr, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials are up 126 points. It's NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Thomas. The Houston Police Department is revising its body-worn camera policy in order to retrieve footage from inactive body cameras. As News 88.7's Lucio Vasquez reports, this comes after a Houston officer failed to turn on his camera during an incident last month.
The newly revised policy, which is still being finalized, will allow HPD to retrieve body camera footage for a short period of time after a police interaction, regardless of whether the officer hit record. The policy change was spurred by an officer-involved shooting last month that ended with a man being shot in the back. HPD says the officer failed to turn his body camera on. HPD Chief Troy Finner says the new feature was activated on all HPD body cameras shortly after the shooting.
We expect all officers to activate their cameras before taking law enforcement actions. There are times, again, it's not possible.
Finner says the policy revision is part of the department's continued effort to build trust with the community. Since March 2021, when the city enacted sweeping police reforms, HPD has released 83 videos showing critical incidents with police. I'm Lucio Vasquez, News 88.7.
Fort Bend County's Parks and Recreation Program is planning to start a number of projects this year after voters approved a $153 million bond last November. The biggest project involves improvements to a gymnasium in central Fort Bend County near Richmond, which includes batting cages for baseball, softball, and cricket. Darren McCarthy is the Fort Bend County
barang lagi yuk, bisa yuk.
Our goal is to eventually be the best parks department, countywide parks department in the entire state of Texas.
The county hopes to complete the upgrades to 2 parks this spring. It also has plans for a Black Cowboy Museum and an African American Memorial Learning Center in Kensington. The weather for today, there is a chance of an isolated shower or thunderstorm this afternoon. Highs in the mid-60s. Tonight will be in the mid-50s before the overnight low. I'm Matt Thomas, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from the Public Welfare Foundation, committed to advancing a transformative approach to justice that is community-led, restorative, and racially just. Learn more at publicwelfare.org. And the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
No matter where you are, it's Texas Standard Time on this January 26th. Hope you're having a great Friday. Ever heard this one? Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. That's right. Many folks recognize that phrase as the motto of the U.S. Postal Service, although it is not officially. It's actually a passage from the revision of a poem by Charles Eliot called The Letter, a phrase inscribed on the old post office building in New York and a saying that the American public's long associated with the spirit of the USPS and the indefatigable letter carrier. But that poem and that building in New York are more than 100 years old. And much has changed in the business of written communication, and certainly at the Postal Service, too. And a lot of Texans might tell you they're feeling the effects of those changes right now. Delays in mail delivery have sparked complaints from residents across the Houston area over the last few weeks, and this week the U.S. Postal Service sent additional workers to help. The issues apparently stem from changes being implemented at the Missouri City facility, according to a statement by the U.S. Postal Service this week. These are changes that are part of the USPS's Delivering for America plan, which is attempting to modernize the postal system. Here to to tell us more about this issue, Congressman Al Green, who represents the 9th District of Texas, including parts of Houston. Congressman Green, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on with you.
And it's an honor to have you. You getting an earful from your constituents about these delays? Well, what are you hearing?
I am, and if I may, at the genesis of this conversation, let me say that I am a supporter of USPS. In Congress, I have voted for tens of billions of dollars for USPS to sustain it. I support the workers there. I believe in this USPS system that we've established in our country. So this is not about them in any way being less than an entity that I would want to see continue to deliver for us, deliver our mail. USPS has, unfortunately, not lived up to the standards that it has set for itself. We have many people who have medicine, persons who have other things that are very important to them that are not getting these things timely and appropriately. Our office has been inundated with complaints. We're approaching 200 complaints now. We had a Marine. His medicine was delayed, and we went over to the VA to get medicine for him because his medicine could not be found by USPS. It's unbelievable how this is impacting people, and it's bigger than just the Houston area because mail comes in from all around the country and some from out of the country to this center to be processed so that they can get to people in the area.
What are you hearing from Postal Service officials about this, and does it all line up for you?
What I'm hearing is not the real issue when it comes to the question of postal delivery. A congressional office should not become the spokesperson for USPS. They have people who are paid good money in their communications department to do this. So there are two issues here. The two issues are, one, transparency and communication. They have become what I believe to be a closed society, where they are of the opinion that they don't have to have press conferences and explain what's happening to the public mail that is entrusted to them. The other side of it is these delays, as they are explaining to me, are associated with growth, associated with new technology, associated with trying to deliver a better product, all of which I support. But what I don't support is when things stack up as they have at that Missouri City Processing Center, and when they are not getting things done as they should, and their failure to explain to the public what's going on, and they put me in the position of having to do it.
Well, so the Postal Service says that they're hiring additional workers. There are a lot of folks in the Houston area saying, I mean, we've heard stories like haven't even received Christmas packages, for example. What are the next steps here? How are you trying to reassure folks in your district that the mail will resume and they'll start getting those packages and letters?
I'm going to tour the plant. They have agreed that I will do this along with my colleague, Ms. Sylvia Garcia, Congresswoman, and we will tour it at some point in the near future. And after we tour the plant, some decision will be made as to whether or not we believe this is going to be a circumstance that can take care of not only the mail that's coming in currently, but also the mail that will be coming in for this March election. The mail ballots are coming in. We want to make sure that those ballots are handled appropriately. So we'll make some decision about it. If we conclude, or I conclude, that they are moved forward satisfactorily, then I suppose we will give them the opportunity to do so. But if not, then we may ask for a congressional hearing. I can't guarantee a hearing. I can guarantee that I can ask for it, and that we'll give those who are the chairs the appropriate opportunity to respond to the request. So these are a couple of things that we have in store, possibly. And I say possibly because the field hearing is not something that I've decided to do. But I have concluded that a tour of the plants is something that's necessary. That is a south plant in Missouri City, and then there's a north side plant as well.
Congressman Al Green represents the 9th District of Texas, including parts of Houston. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us on the Texas Standard.
Thank you.
A new Texas law that gives police in Texas the power to arrest people suspected of crossing the border illegally is set to take effect in March, a move seen by many as a direct challenge to the federal government's role on the border. Lawsuits have been filed to prevent the law from taking effect. But as legal fights over that play out, local police departments are thinking about how they would handle this new power. And as Marfa Public Radio's Travis Bubenik tells us, some in the state's Big Bend region say they're not eager to enforce the new law.
A Border Patrol agent comes on the radio in Terrell County Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland's truck as he heads down a rocky desert road, sweeping views of the Rio Grande in Mexico off in the distance.
From here, I mean, you can see 100 miles to the east and 100 miles to the west and 100 miles to the south.
Down at the border, Cleveland hops out of his truck and points out what he says is a common place to cross the border.
They'll walk down in that canyon, and then they'll down along the river, come up, they'll walk up this road.
Cleveland's a former Border Patrol agent himself, but his job as sheriff's not that different these days.
The majority of what we do ends up being calls to assist Border Patrol, to assist a landowner that may have spotted somebody on their land.
But on this chilly winter day, it's quiet. You only sound the trickling of the Rio Grande.
And then turn right.
The Big Bend region sees much fewer migrant encounters, as Customs and Border Protection calls them, than South Texas, where thousands of people have crossed in recent weeks. Cleveland argues the new law is more aimed at those parts of the border. Out here, he says, he won't be arresting migrants suspected of crossing the border illegally.
What I'll be doing is no different than what I do now. I mean, if I encounter somebody that's crossed our border illegally, then first thing I'll do will be give Border Patrol a call.
The sheriff's not passing on the new law because he disagrees with it. Cleveland's an outspoken critic of the Biden administration's policies on border security and immigration. He regularly talks about it on conservative TV news outlets. But he says his small department just doesn't have the resources to take migrants into custody. Sheriff Ronnie Dodson in neighboring Brewster County echoes that.
My problem is in our area is we don't have no place to put them.
Even though border crossing numbers here are the lowest anywhere on the southwest border, Dodson says it wouldn't take much to stress his department.
You know, we could stop one truck and fill the jail up.
He says the costs of housing and feeding people arrested under the new border law could quickly add up.
I mean, even if we arrest them and put them in jail, most of these folks ain't never going to be able to pay a fine. So I worry about the burden it's going to put on these counties.
That's also a concern over in Presidio County.
We don't have a lot of money. This is the poorest county in Texas.
Joe Portillo, the county's top elected official.
Once you take someone into custody, it does have a fiscal cost. They need to eat. God forbid one of them needs a doctor. They need, medication. But there will be an added cost to the county.
To help offset those costs, Texas lawmakers did pass a separate measure allowing local governments to apply for some of the $1.5 billion in border security money approved last year. But it's not clear how much of that will be available. None of the officials interviewed for this story expressed the same kind of human rights concerns about the new law that critics have highlighted, particularly worries that it could lead to racial profiling. But Fernando Garcia, with the El Paso-based advocacy group Border Network for Human Rights, says his group is deeply concerned about police being untrained in immigration enforcement.
It is like it's a formula to expect us stemming civil and human rights violations.
Back on the banks of the Rio Grande, Terrell County Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland says plainly he supports the new law and Governor Greg Abbott's border security crackdown as a whole.
He's the governor of the state of Texas, and his job is to protect Texans, and I think he's doing that exactly.
But as Texas continues to assert more authority over the border than it ever has before, some sheriffs here in this far-flung part of the state say they'll leave the job of immigration enforcement to the feds. In Marfa, I'm Travis Bubenik.
And Wells Dunbar is monitoring the talk of Texas online. He's our social media editor. Welcome back, Wells.
Hi, good to be back. Well, that showdown on several fronts between the federal and state government over immigration policy continuing to generate conversation online, with Governor Greg Abbott asserting Texas' rights to militarize the border and curb illegal immigration. As we've also noted this week, the governor said Texas troops would continue to string barbed wire along the border, by the Supreme Court, saying federal immigration officials have the right to remove that wire. Other Republican governors are getting behind Abbott, further inflaming what some see as a potential constitutional crisis here. On her Facebook page, Sean Lowry says the federal government has always had certain responsibilities, including border control, but there's been a move, starting particularly under the Trump administration, to exert state rights. Hopefully, he says, the courts will not be taking us in the direction of becoming the un-United States. Just one reaction we're seeing there, David. I'll be back with more from social media later in the broadcast.
Let us hear from you. Look for Texas Standard on your social media platform of choice. Wales back at about 35. There are a lot of concerns about a highly viral disease spreading among deer, and state officials euthanize the population of a major deer preserve. Do they really have to be killed? That and more as the Standard continues.
Support for Texas Standard comes from the Charles Budd Foundation, pursuing a more equitable and prosperous future for all Texans through education and community partnerships. Learn more at charlesbuddfdn.org.
This is News 88.7. If a multiverse really exists, its potential is practically limitless.
With a traversable wormhole, they could travel through them and perhaps would allow them passage into another part of our universe, or maybe even another universe altogether.
A physicist on the math and science of the multiverse. That's next time on Think.
That's Think, tonight at 10, here on News 88.7, your NPR station.
If you took part in our recent fundraiser, take an extra step to have your donation matched. Current and retired employees may be eligible for an employee matching program. Visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/match to search for your company.
Support also comes from Sand and Sea Properties, connecting generations of Texans to Galveston Island real estate since 1974. Historic properties, home sites, vacation homes, and condos can be viewed at sandandsea.com. You're listening to News 88.7. It's 10:20.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. After multiple high-profile cases of Texas women fleeing the state during crisis pregnancies, the focus of the state's abortion battle has become saving the life of the mother. The Texas Public Radio's David Martin Davies reports Texas continues to fight federal efforts that would save a mother's life if an emergency abortion is deemed medically necessary.
The Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, or EMTALA, is a federal law that requires health providers to perform life-saving care in emergency situations. Sarah Rosenbaum is a professor of health policy at George Washington University.
If the emergency department personnel decide that you have an emergency medical condition, they must stabilize you.
Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the banning of abortion in a number of states like Texas, the Biden administration has issued guidance that states EMTALA can require abortions when the mother is in a dire situation and an abortion is necessary to stabilize the patient, even in states like Texas where abortion is illegal.
We are talking about emergency department care, and this assertion on the part of Texas and other states that doing anything to protect health emergencies somehow opens the door to, abortion on demand in emergency departments is evidence of a gross misunderstanding of EMTALA.
In Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton's statement when he sued the Biden administration over EMTALA, he said, quote, "The Biden administration is seeking to transform every emergency room in the country into a walk-in abortion clinic." Rosenbaum disagrees.
It's a statement made out of complete ignorance over the meaning of EMTALA, and obviously it's a statement made in complete antipathy to women facing very serious health emergencies.
And claims that Biden wants to force doctors who oppose abortion to perform abortions is also wrong, said Rosenbaum, because there already is a conscience exemption in EMTALA.
So the notion that these doctors' rights are being violated is also completely wrong.
But Texas has won its anti-EMTALA arguments before a federal judge, and earlier this month, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the administration cannot use EMTALA to require hospitals in Texas to provide abortions for women whose lives are at risk due to pregnancy, ruling, quote, "EMTALA does not mandate medical treatments, let alone abortion care, nor does it preempt Texas law. But this week, the Biden administration announced new actions to strengthen EMTALA by educating the public about their rights to emergency medical care, including emergency abortions. However, Katie Keith, Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy Director of the White House Gender Policy Council, said that in Texas, it's difficult because this is all caught up in the courts.
This administration has long taken the position that emergency care under that law, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, can include abortion care in some circumstances, and we're defending that interpretation. We've defended that interpretation in Texas, and we're defending it at the Supreme Court right now in a separate case out of Idaho.
The U.S. Supreme Court will hear an Idaho abortion case involving EMTALA in April. In San Antonio, I'm David Martin Davies.
Support for coverage of business comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' comp provider committed to protecting Texas employers by investigating fraud and focusing on preventing abuse of the system. More at texasmutual.com/fraud.
And you are listening to the Texas Standard. More than a decade ago, Dallas informally agreed to lease city land to a company called Trinity East Energy LLC for drilling. Trinity East paid more than $19 million as part of this agreement, but they never actually got the chance to drill on that land. The oil and gas company sued the city of Dallas and won a $55 million settlement. And this week, Dallas City Council, without discussion, voted in favor of issuing bonds to pay that fine. Here to get us up to speed on the history of this case and the city's ultimate decision on how to pay the fine is accountability reporter Nathan Collins from our partner station KERA in North Texas. Nathan, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Thanks for having me.
Can you say a little bit more about how Dallas ended up in this situation in the first place, having to pay out tens of millions of dollars to an oil and natural gas drilling company?
Right, so this issue kind of started when the city was facing a budgetary shortfall back in the early 2000s. Basically, the city was trying to make up fallen revenue in the budget, and they basically started soliciting for possible oil and gas drilling on city-owned land. Trinity basically, took up the offer. They responded to the solicitation, and they started the process and actually leased land from the city to start a natural gas drilling operation. But like you said, it never came to fruition. Basically, the city denied these special permits that the company needed before it could happen.
After the company had already made this commitment to use this land for this very purpose, right?
Right, yeah, and also they were given assurances. The company was given assurances by the then Dallas city manager and city staff. And in fact, there was a signed letter that the city manager at the time had signed, basically saying, yeah, we're gonna get you these permits, these special permits you need to start drilling in the city.
So there was a lawsuit. I guess a formal verdict here wasn't settled before the end. It was jury award $55 million.
Yeah, so basically it's a final judgment, and basically the court has ordered that the city has to pay up to $55 million for this final judgment, and that includes pre-judgment interest and post-judgment interest as well, while the lawsuit is going on.
Well, I suppose there's some finger pointing going on. Well, at least I would imagine that's happening. Who's to blame for this situation that Dallas found itself in?
I'm not sure if there's one solitary person that's to blame, but I think that if you kind of look back at the situation, the city manager at the time, probably the blame falls on her just for making this deal for whatever reason, for either to fix the budget, for any reason. But she did make this deal, and it fell through.
So now Dallas is talking about issuing these bonds. When governments issue bonds to pay for things like fines, that's generally thought of as sloppy financial management. What has been the city of Dallas's response to criticism of the decision to issue the bonds, and what sort of criticism have you been hearing?
So yeah, I think the issue about the bond is kind of vague. I reached out to the city and didn't get a clear answer necessarily about whether or not taxpayers were going to weigh in on this issue. But the city basically said that while they're disappointed about the outcome of the lawsuit, They say they've exhausted every legal avenue, and it's basically time to pay the bill. They said cities can choose to pay large judgments from current operating funds or by issuing bonds, basically debt, for spreading the cost out over a long period or a period of time.
Will voters get a chance to weigh in?
I'm not sure. I think because it's a final judgment and the court has basically ordered the city to pay this, I'm not sure that Dallas voters really have a say one way or another. The city, from what I know, the city has to pay this regardless.
We've been speaking with KERA's accountability reporter, Nathan Collins, and we're going to have a link to more of his reporting at TexasStandard.org. Nathan, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Support for Texas Standard comes from the Texas Tuition Promise Fund. For over 10 years, helping families lock in current tuition rates and required fees at Texas public colleges and universities, excluding medical and dental institutions. TexasTuitionPromiseFund.com.
You're listening to News 88.7, your NPR station.
Next time on Climate One, indigenous people have terrible histories with industries that promise positive change and do the opposite. How can a move to clean energy be different?
For it to be just, it shouldn't be outsiders coming in and usurping all of the value of these systems and sending it off ramps.
What makes a just transition for indigenous communities? On the next Climate One.
Sunday morning at 6. Support comes from Sparks Engineering, dedicated to providing an experienced team of licensed engineers to help companies across all industries develop new technology. Offices in Houston and Dallas, or at sbarxengineering.com. And Comcast Business, helping to protect small businesses from big cyber threats with security options from Comcast Business. Restrictions apply, requires Comcast Business Internet, lease router, and security edge. You're listening to News 88.7. It's 10:30 a.m.
From the Texas Newsroom, I'm Matt Thomas. Texas and the Biden administration are in a political standoff over whether Border Patrol agents can access an Eagle Pass park near the border that's blocked off by the state. The Biden administration set a deadline today to allow the agents to access the park near the border at Eagle Pass. But KERA's Tolawani Osibamo reports state officials are so far refusing.
The U.S. Supreme Court gave Border Patrol permission to remove razor wire from a section of the Mexico border, but Texas has so far refused to allow agents into Shelby Park and Eagle Pass to access the area. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said the state will continue blocking agents from entering in most cases. He spoke on the conservative podcast, The Benny Show.
We're not letting the Border Patrol in there to process people. They can come in if they need to do some emergency process, but we're not letting them in there just to let more people in.
Paxton also said the state is erecting more concertina wire at the border despite the High Court's decision. I'm Toluwani Osibamo in Dallas.
A New Hampshire National Guard officer on the Texas-Mexico border has pleaded guilty to assault, sexual harassment, and several other crimes. The Associated Press reports Lieutenant Colonel Mark Patterson led a battalion assigned to support U.S. Border Patrol in 2022. He was convicted and sentenced to a reprimand by a military judge in San Antonio as part of a plea deal. The Army has not provided details on those actions. State Attorney General Ken Paxton wants a telehealth clinic in Georgia to turn over records on the transgender minors it's treating from Texas. It's the second request Paxton has made from out-of-state clinics that provide services to transgender youth. Officials with Seattle Children's Hospital in Washington State denied a similar request, citing privacy concerns. The city of Uvalde is responding to the Department of Justice report on the 2022 Robb Elementary School shooting. Texas Public Radio's Kayla Padilla reports.
In a statement, Uvalde city officials say that since the shooting, the police department has been provided with new equipment and that officers have undergone 1,700 hours of combined training. In addition, the city says they've also added or improved more than a dozen training programs with local entities, which include the Uvalde CISD Police Department and the Uvalde County Sheriff's Department. The city says the Justice Department is committed to providing law enforcement with additional additional training. I'm Kayla Padilla in San Antonio.
I'm Matt Thomas from the Texas Newsroom.
You're listening to statewide news from public radio stations across Texas. This coverage is only possible.
Oke, kalau begitu saya Yudi pamit undur diri dulu. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dadah.